I'm Nola Simon. I'm the host of the Hybrid Remote Center of Excellence. And in tribute to the fact that I've now made the Good Pod's all-time careers charts, I'm going to actually record an episode about performance reviews, which is directly related to career development. Except I want to talk about it in a way that not a lot of people actually are talking about performance reviews, and that's the future-focused aspect of it. I'm one of those people who understands that performance reviews are definitely for the company to assess your performance, to determine whether you are eligible for a raise or bonus. But I'm one of those people who looks at it from a strategy point of view as well too. So I'm going to go back and look at what you've told me in previous years and connect those dots. If you've told me to work on skills, I'm going to demonstrate to you how I did those skills. If you've told me that I need to branch out and meet other people and extend my network, I'm going to demonstrate to you how I've taken your advice. If I've suggested that there's something that I want to look into from year to year, I'm going to demonstrate to you how I've worked on that. So I've got a through line of, if you look at my performance review year after year, of how I'm actually using this to move forward. It's really not just, what did you do this year? Do you earn the raise or the bonus? I don't treat it as a checkbox activity. And I always had to be the person driving that because realistically, the managers that I worked with, they often had never actually worked for other companies. Frequently, the company that I worked with, they came in, they got promoted to management, and then they basically stayed in management if they stayed. So they either stayed a really long time or they stayed a really short time. So I didn't have a lot of really experienced managers who knew how to advance themselves out of the department that we worked in. So I had to drive my own development. And it was also how I advocated for flexibility. I would include all of the work that I did to design the strategy and implement the work from home initiatives, how I acted as a subject matter expert, how I facilitated the relationships between the different areas the company needed to support workplace flexibility. And I would illustrate that. One year I trained 60 staff members on how to actually host webinars. One year I actually worked with a remote relationship management team to sell their products, basically sell their services to the rest of the company and to really market and drive uptake on their services. So it really depended what I did, but a lot of it wasn't necessarily my job description. When I started getting involved in employee resource groups, that's all volunteer work. So where is that captured? It's not really part of your job description, but it is work that you're doing that benefits the company and makes the employee experience better. Where does that get captured? If you don't actually put that in your performance review, it gets captured nowhere. So they're not paying for you, but they're benefiting from the work that you do. So you need to capture it somewhere. Keep in mind that performance reviews are legal documents. So you need to be able to tell the story of how you were an extraordinary employee above and beyond your job description, and how you're driving forward and connecting what you're doing initially to where you want to be in the future. If you have a return to office mandate, for example, right now, but that's not working for you, what you can do is really set up and ask for what it is you want to see and then work towards that. For example, in 2011, there was no work from home. I advocated for what I wanted. I put it in my performance reviews. I had meetings with managers. I gave them resources. I gave them research. I gave them stats. I gave them ideas on how they could actually implement that. And then when the pilot happened, I was part of the pilot because I'd been actively talking about it. Then that year, I ended up being a guinea pig because I actually had an accident, broke my foot. I ended up being the only person who's actually working from home permanently for several months because I couldn't actually drive and I couldn't walk. It wasn't safe for me to drive or take transit. And it was either that or I went on leave. So they accommodated me working from home because there's nothing wrong with my brain. But because of that, I became the person who was helping them design strategy. I was helping them design policy and procedure. I was testing technology and giving feedback. I was piloting different alternatives and approaches. I was the connector between IT and the product team and the project management team and the managers. I was the super connector because I was the only person who was willing and able to not only do all my own work, but to really do the extra work that was required to get the project off the ground. Because I was the only person doing it full time. Everybody else was just doing it one day a week. And because I did that particular year, I was well positioned to then be the ongoing person to be the representative of or the face of that initiative going forward. And so eventually we got up to 4 days a week. And I had another accident, which is where I decided I actually wanted to go full-time remote. And unfortunately, they refused to accommodate that at all. So I actually had to change jobs internally and go into sales because sales was the only role that was actually listed as full-time remote. And I managed to actually get a job based in where I lived. But I had been laying the groundwork for all of that for years. So when I write my performance reviews, I write in detail what happens all year. I write themes and pillars and connect it to the values and the mission statement, and I illustrate how I handle things not only at a macro level, but also like how it ties down into the detail. Large picture to the detailed picture, and illustrate like how I'm aware of how the business works, how the business makes money, and really go far beyond the job description in terms of illustrating my impact. Because there's so many employees who actually don't understand how their day-to-day actually fuels the bottom line of the business. And that's a dangerous place to be. You need to understand how your role is important because otherwise, if you don't understand how your role is either helping the business make money or save money, or bringing them new customers or new contacts to help them develop the business, then that role isn't connected to what's making the business successful at the end of the day. You need money to be able to make a business successful. Think strategically. You need to attach all of the emails that clients send you complimenting your work. You need to attach all of the development emails you have from your manager, proving that you've taken feedback and worked on it. Any initiatives that you take, any volunteer work that you do, you need to document all of that. If somebody is sending you compliments, if they're sending you kudos, if they're sending you shout outs, even if they tell you verbally, put it in writing and then attach that. So we used to use Workday, and so my performance review would often be sometimes 200 pages because it wasn't just what I wrote, it was also all the documentation that I attached to it. Again, performance reviews are a legal document. If that ever gets to court, the company has to store the performance reviews, right? It's part of the due diligence that they owe their employees. And there may be different requirements on how they actually store emails and all of that other documentation, but performance reviews are where that's going to be kept for a very long time. So if you put it into a format that's easily accessible, even 5-7 years later, depending on how long the guideline is for your particular company and your particular location, performance reviews are going to be what they have access to the longest. If you've worked for a company, I worked for a company for over 17 and a half years. If I wanted to pull an email from, say, 2010, probably can't do that. But it was attached to my performance review. For a certain period of time, that performance review is maintained. And I know it's going to be in there because, for one, I kept copies because it's reasonable for you to keep copies of a legal document that you submit on an annual basis that's tied to your compensation. But you also are guaranteed that Your lawyers are going to respect the professionalism that goes into a performance review, because a performance review is a two-way street. So your manager is giving you a review, but you have your opportunity to tell your side of the story. You have the opportunity to build a narrative. And so it's really not just what happened that year, it's how that is directing your career over the period of time. And so this is where you can really strategically use this to advance what it is you'd like to see for workplace flexibility, what it is you'd like to see in terms of skill development. For example, this year, if you're not looking into how you become educated in AI and how that applies to your job and how that's going to fuel your business, if you're not documenting that you're taking all of that courses and asking how that's going to really be something that you can develop, that's probably a missed opportunity, because that's an easy example of a skill that everybody needs to investigate. And storytelling is another one. So if you're looking just for those things alone, use your performance reviews for how you actually envision the future and what support it is you're looking from your managers, from the company, from learning and development to be able to make that possible. Because again, if you are working with them, it's a collaborative effort. You want to be successful. You want the company to be successful. You want the team to be successful. You want your manager to be successful. This is an opportunity where you can actually, even if you word it carefully enough, you can actually manage upwards. So like your manager may not know some of the stuff that you're asking about, but it's an opportunity for you to educate them so they can support you and collaborate with you. That's good for them too. And that's where this is a negotiation. How can you use it to your benefit? And again, it's not just a one and done. It's a year after year development, and it becomes that feed forward process. It's not just feedback. It's give me advice on how you're going to help me get to where it is we need to be as a company, as an employer, as an individual for the future of work. And that's how I use performance reviews. So, anyways, I'd love to know what you think about that. If you have examples that you've shared that's been successful, I'd love to hear those stories. So please comment, review, reach out to me, DM me, and if any way that you want to get a hold of me, I'd love to have that conversation and learn more about how other people are using performance reviews strategically. Thanks. Bye.